Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. If you aren't a Redditor, a lot of this video might not make a lot of sense to you, and if you are a Redditor, you might fucking hate me after this video. I've never hidden behind my opinions, so I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't think Reddit is a very good website. I've used it intermittently since I was a prepubescent boy. That's how long the website has been around. So this isn't even somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about and ranting about a social media website for 30 minutes. I've used the website and I've noticed a significant decrease in quality whenever I go back to using it over time. Obviously, the past year or two has been rough for Reddit in general. We got hyper-intrusive ads being shoved down our throat disguised as real posts. The website still has a terrible botting problem. Moderators for most subreddits are power-hungry megalomaniacs with an ego disorder. The front page results are 100% rigged in the algorithm, and posts that have received immense attention are never shown on the front page. And the biggest problem, in my opinion, is that Reddit is fundamentally flawed as a concept. On paper, it sounds great. You can enter the website and find a subreddit for any topic imaginable. Specific video games, unspecific video games, obscure pornography, non-obscure pornography, a subreddit about Formula 1 racing, and one about UK politics, a subreddit about new mothers struggling with their first children. The list will go on and on. If you want to make a new subreddit about a topic that doesn't exist, the cool part is you can. It's all user-driven. You're able to just make one if it doesn't exist yet. This means that Reddit is, for the most part, going to have a subreddit for pretty much any topic imaginable. But here's where anyone that has taken a high school psychology course has probably figured out. People don't like to be wrong, and most individuals shy away from controversy. Most of the subreddits are complete echo chambers. They aren't looking for criticism about a topic, they are looking for people to agree with them. This applies to almost any aspect in life, but it's really difficult to have a controversial conversation with people on the website because random people can just come along and downvote you, which makes your post or even your comment get shoved down at the bottom of the page, and some controversial comments even get hidden and require an extra click to open up. This means that if your comment is an unpopular opinion, less people are going to see it. The site intrinsically favors a tribe mentality. It offers no place for differing viewpoints, hence why you will often enter a subreddit and find that the posts tend to be the same week after week, month after month. And maybe I'm being too harsh calling every subreddit an echo chamber. I have seen certain subreddits that actively pursue discourse and allow unpopular opinions to be talked about. Not every subreddit is a complete echo chamber, but most of them are. I basically use Reddit for pornography and memes, and that's it. I stay the fuck out of the comment sections for a very good reason. Where does that bring us to today's video? Guild Wars 2. I know, you were all expecting it. A few days ago, I was playing the game and I needed 2 mastery points for the new Adept Handicrafting Mastery added in the Quarter 2 update for Jan Their Wilds. I could just go do the story chapters and get the mastery points that I needed, but no. I was busy with Winter's Day, give me a fucking break. Instead, I went through the Achievements tab and found a couple of collections from previous maps that I hadn't completed yet. One in particular caught my eye, Tales of the Lowland Wisps. For those of you who might not know because you don't play the game or just don't care, this collection has been bugged for a while. You cannot complete this collection. This specific wisp is glitched out and it will stop moving at this exact spot and will not progress further. The collection is impossible to finish. I thought to myself, the collection was bugged 3 months ago, surely it's been fixed by now, right? Wrong, fuck you. The bug has not been fixed yet, and it's literally been months. I have personally submitted 2 different bug reports on this specific issue months ago, and I know that most people who have played Jan Their Wilds are aware of this issue. The wiki even mentions it at the bottom of the collection page. The developers are 100% aware of this, they just haven't fixed it for some reason. Do you know what the actual kicker here is? I know what the problem is. I've played enough of this game and I have enough experience in game development that I know exactly what's happening here. As soon as I saw this happen, I knew that it was like one of 3 issues and none of them would ever actually take me very long to fix. It would take me like an hour or 2 to troubleshoot which of the 3 problems it is and solve it, and yet here we are, months after this collection has been bugged, and the developers still haven't fixed it. Being upset at this fact and wanting to create some controversy because I've been in a foul mood for the past 8 months of my life, I took to the subreddit for Guild Wars 2 and created a post. On the topic of the Guild Wars 2 subreddit, don't go onto the subreddit. Most of the time, Reddit is just not worth the hassle. However, it's especially bad on the Guild Wars 2 subreddit. That place is a fucking cesspool. Browsing through the default hot page, you might not see much wrong. You might stumble across a downvoted post of some kind that makes you wonder if something is wrong beneath the surface, but most of the time the subreddit is just memes and people showing off their homesteads and character transmogs, or artwork, or talking about how great the game is. But under the surface of normal posts lies an ocean of unhinged players that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. If you are a new player looking for advice or information, you would actually have more luck going onto the Guild Wars 2 forums than on ArenaNet's actual website. I am not joking, that is how bad the subreddit is. Every time that I look at the subreddit, the most benign and innocuous posts are sitting there with negative upvotes, and yet there are a ton of posts with batshit crazy takes out of left field that are somehow upvoted positively. And the craziest part is that it's almost always the same people. I know a bunch of them by name, that's how memorable some of them are back when I used to use the subreddit. Most of the people that on the subreddit are complete toxic lunatics, and nothing on that forum is to be trusted. I would rather go onto 4chan for Guild Wars 2 advice than ask a genuine question on the subreddit. I would actually rather encourage players to sift through all the racial slurs on 4chan to get advice that they need, rather than let them fester in the subreddit. That's how bad the subreddit is. So I made a post of my own. And speaking of genuine questions, full disclosure, this post is 100% genuine. I was not trolling in any way, it was not rage bait, I was genuinely trying to bring the community attention to a subject that they might not be aware of. Some players might not have done this collection or be aware that the developers pretty much don't want to fix specific bugs because it's too much effort and they can't be bothered to try anymore. My post didn't contain any profanity, I kept it family friendly, and I'd like to think that in hindsight that nothing that I said would have been construed as controversial. I have talked about these topics with people in-game in Guild Wars 2, and on the forums, and for the most part, people do agree with me. And ultimately, I think that everything I said in this post was very reasonable, and most players outside of the subreddit would have happily agreed with me. Here is the post. I needed a mastery point in Janthier Wilds, so I looked around the achievement category and realized that I was still missing a collection in Lowland Shores, the Tale of the Lowland Wisps collection. I remembered, oh, that was bugged last time I tried to do it, the wiki page for the collection even lists the bug that stops the progress, surely it should have been fixed by now, right? I even remember submitting my own bug report when I couldn't progress due to the error. Nope, still not fixed. It's literally been months. We're on Q2, almost Q3 of Janthier Wild's development cycle, and the bug still hasn't been addressed. They're perfectly capable of nerfing every class in the game in competitive game modes. ANET couldn't scrape together 2 hours of dev time to fix the issue causing an entire PvE collection to bug out and not be able to be completed. What is even going on in the support department at this company? I have no problem with the developers polishing up competitive game modes, but it seems like they're focusing on those game modes despite the fact that less than 10% of the player base ever actually plays them regularly. Maybe that is something to be addressed and fixed, but it shouldn't come at a severe cost to the PvE side of the game, the side where most players are situated. And this isn't a new issue either. I have trouble with the Lasting Bonds collection in Sandswept Isles, specifically the first step, because the game refuses to accept the Olmacon bandolier that I have in my inventory. I swapped to the character that I think did the story step to get the bandolier, nothing. I literally cannot progress that collection at all, and the bug has been in the game for years at this point. I see posts every few weeks of people asking for help with the bug, it has never been fixed. There are probably a handful of other PvE collections that are bugged and cannot be progressed due to the issues that have been in the game for years. I'm almost certain that there are others. I legitimately have no choice but to believe that the developers don't fix bugs at this point. I can't genuinely come to any other conclusion besides that. The interface/UI for submitting bug reports is missing vital categories and is incredibly outdated, and even has its own bugs that make submitting reports annoying. That should be proof enough of them not caring about bugs unless it somehow affects competitive game modes or allows players to circumvent strikes and raids mechanics. Those are the only bugs I ever see get fixed, nothing that actually impacts player experiences. This is ridiculous. That's the post. No profanity. No name calling. Some people might construe me as hostile, but I think I was being very generous and conservative in that post. However, I've had experiences on the subreddit before. I basically got emails and warnings directly from the moderators of the subreddit on a previous account about causing drama. I am not joking with you, I was actually warned to not stir the pot on a previous account. Then they straight up blocked me from being able to post or comment on the subreddit, despite the fact that none of my comments ever contained ad hominem attacks or racial slurs or just insults in general. Despite the fact that I see numerous individuals post misinformation on the subreddit, I'm the one that got blocked. That account was so downvoted that I ended up deleting it entirely because I was so sick of Reddit in general, and that was about 4 years ago. However, about a year ago, I decided to make a new Reddit account and kind of lurk around for a little while. I spent the first few months messing with people in politically charged subreddits, always a fun pastime of mine, but for the most part, I don't really use the account to have actual conversations with people. I use it to fuck with them. That's all I use it for. I do not go onto Reddit to have intellectual discussions with people, the same reason why I don't go into the YouTube comments to have riveting conversations with the populace down there. I use it to troll them. As far as I'm concerned, that is all that Reddit is good for at this point, trolling other people. Anyway, I decided to see if I was as in tune with the human psyche as I thought I might be. I have a pretty good grasp on how people think, and it's rather easy for me to predict how somebody might behave in a very heated situation. If I wanted to, I could make 90% of the global population commit murder in the right circumstances. That is not me being facetious, by the way. I am being completely serious. That's how good I am at pissing people off. Doesn't matter if we're talking about sports or video games or how to cook scrambled eggs correctly, I am tremendously good at getting under people's skin. I think it's one of those hidden talents that every sociopath has. So, I made the post, and I decided that I wanted to farm some content out of this whole shebang. If I'm going to be called a cuck online, I might as well get something out of it besides sexual gratification. So, I made a game out of this whole thing. I made a bingo card a few hours after I made the post, each entry in the card being something that we're going to look for in the replies to my post, and then I waited for 2 days. I figured 48 hours is enough time for me to cause a ruckus and then let the dust settle. It would be enough time for people to argue with each other and with me, and then move on to another controversial post in the subreddit. And, if I'm going to be honest with you, I really just wanted to increase my chances of a bingo. And just because some of you might think that I'm cheating by modifying the bingo card before I record this video, here is the proof. The date as of recording this script is December 28th, 2024. I made the post on December 26th, the day after Christmas. A few hours after the post, I made the Word document. Here is the metadata on that file. I made it that same morning, and it hasn't been modified since 5 minutes after I made the bingo card. And yes, it is a weird flex, but I absolutely conjured this entire idea and the entire bingo card in just 5 minutes. That's how confident I was in my ability to guess people's replies in the subreddit. Now, before we do this, I want to make clear at the start that unlike everything else I use my Reddit account for, I was not trying to piss people off. As I said before, my post was a genuine conversation. I made that post in good faith. I just knew that the Guild Wars 2 community was either going to agree with me wholeheartedly, which, let's be honest, given the fact that my post was directly criticizing ArenaNet, probably wasn't going to happen, or that the community was going to call me names and try to argue my very valid points with logical fallacies. Anyway, because the situation ended up being the latter, spoiler alert, I decided not to censor anybody's names. I'm not going to bother to go through the effort. It doesn't really affect anything. You can see this post. It's all public information anyway. Me censoring people's names was not going to affect anything. And, as far as I'm concerned, anonymity is overrated anyway. If you're going to talk shit, you better be able to put a face or a name to the statement. But, for legal reasons, and just because people will call me an asshole if I don't, I have to insert a warning here. Do not go and harass people just because they're dumb. It's not really worth your time. I only really do it because it's fun, and I actually don't need any of you defending me. I am perfectly capable of defending myself if I wanted to. It just so happens that I don't really give a shit about what anybody in the subreddit says to me for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. The place is a cesspool, and it should really never be taken seriously. Without further ado, let's get started. Here's the bingo card. Let's see what everybody said about my post. Alrighty. Let's get started. This is the post. We can scroll down. I'll show you guys the insights. This thing got 6,500 views, a 40% upvote rate, which is honestly surprising. 32 comments, which I'm very excited about. One of those is mine. I did respond to one person before I had the idea to create a bingo card and make this a video. I responded to one person before. I was like, what am I doing? I shouldn't respond to people. I should fucking farm content out of this. But anyway, let's start with the first comment. They only care about competitive game modes. You know that they purposely started calling World v. World their cornerstone game mode while literally having a bugged cornerstone in DBL Garrison for a decade that they won't fix? Ain't it only care about PvE? They rather release... Okay, so English is not your first language. They rather release entire expansions before begrudgingly fixing something in World v. World. Okay, so first off, that's not what I said. I never said that they only care about competitive game modes. My post specifically says that the developers focus on competitive game modes. That's exactly what I said. At no point did I put in this post, they only care about competitive game modes. I said that recently the developers are focusing on competitive game modes. So this is not only false, it's also a straw man argument. You know that they purposely started calling World v World their cornerstone game mode while literally having a bugged cornerstone and DBL Gary for a decade they want fixed? That's exactly my point. Is the developers they're trying to lean more into the competitive aspects of Guild Wars 2, and yet PvE is the fucking game mode where most people play. That's my fucking point. He proved my point here. ANET only cares about PvE, but that's not the case. Not if they're calling World v World their cornerstone game mode. So you're already contradicting yourself here. ANET doesn't care only about PvE, not if they're calling World v World a cornerstone game mode. They would rather release entire expansions before begrudgingly fixing something in World v World. That's also not true. If you go through some of their updates or whatever, most of the time you will often not see issues with PvE being addressed that are years and months old. Like, this is a great example of it. Bug fixes for very minor shit. Adjusted the following homestead decoration recipes. Nobody gives a fuck. Fixed an issue that caused aberrant combat behavior for Greer in the Mount Balria raid. Fix the potential exploit for Greer in the Mount Balria raid. These are the only PvE fixes we get. Is shit that nobody cares about, or issues in strikes and raids that are like they're making it too easy is what you get. And besides these PvE fixes, the only fixes you get are World v World issues. Lowered the health of the missed sentry turrets. Fixed an issue in which sentry turrets would disappear when the player who placed them got into a mount. Fixed a server crash associated with the missed sentry turrets. Fix an issue in which the World v World defend objective achievements were prevented from progressing. It's all convergences in World v World. And a really good example of this is when you'll often see patches or whatever, and they only fucking touch World v World stuff when it comes to profession skills. Reduce the damage multiplier in PvP only. Increase the cooldown in PvP only. Reduce the duration from 3 to 2 seconds in World v World only. This is all these updates are. There's nothing that affects PvE stuff. This is what the developers are spending time on. Yes, we get fucking new things like a new raid or a new convergence or whatever, but there are genuine issues addressed that have been issues in the PvE community for literally years, and the developers aren't doing anything about them. This bug for the Wisps of the Lowland Coden collection has been an issue for like months, and apparently we're not going to get fixed until January. It literally took them over 3 months to fix an issue that should have taken a developer less than an hour to fix. This is my problem that we're talking about here. So I don't know why this is so heavily upvoted. This is complete fucking nonsense. So this guy responds, they don't even care about PvE. Let's take, for example, the most recent thing that people are expected to do in the game, Winter's Day. How many years has it been since any of the holidays got any kind of meaningful change? They only care about outfits and story mode. But Winter's Day, like, really I agree with this person on the front that Winter's Day deserves, like, new events or updated game modes. I went through and I did all the achievements on Winter's Day or whatever, and there is still a bug in the game for the Snowball Mayhem. The Snowball Mayhem has a bug in it that I noticed, right? Where I have to get 3 wins or whatever to get an achievement done. And if you're on a team that loses a bunch of players or whatever, you can volunteer to be sent to the opposing team. And in PvP, when you take the volunteer reward, you are granted the win regardless of what happens in the game. And even in this, you're even offered the reward. If you hover over the volunteer reward over like the panel or whatever, it'll tell you will be issued a win regardless of what happens. This does not happen during Snowball Mayhem. So I volunteered once and didn't get the win that I needed. So I was like, fuck it. Nobody's going to want to volunteer ever in Snowball Mayhem. This is a bug, and it's been in the game for a really long time. If you play PvP in World v World, you know that ANET doesn't give a fuck to these community members. Then why are they spending so much time balancing the game modes? Why are they spending so much time developing and overhauling old content for these game modes if they don't give a fuck about those game modes? Every time I read patch notes, half of the fucking patch notes are about World v World and PvP, and I don't think a lot of people play those game modes. Statistically, not very much of the community plays these game modes, so why are the developers spending so much time on them? Did you even look at the numerous forum posts about the Wisp issue from the past few months before you wrote this whole rant? It's currently planned to be fixed by the January 14th update. Took me less than 30 seconds to find. Yeah, here's the issue. January 14th is still like 3 months after the collection. 6 months. When was the fucking collection added? It's been literally months, and it took them this long to fix the fucking issue. Sure, they do have a point that relatively important parts of the newer expansions are significantly broken, and we aren't talking like one NPC clipping through that doesn't matter, but like important stuff like weapons and achievement collections, like, you know, most of the reason people play PvE open world for. And this is one of the things that I did reply, by the way. This is one of the only replies that I made, by the way, to this guy. This is the first comment that I think I saw, and I replied to him immediately. Took me less than 30 seconds to find that Ain't It has no plans to fix the Lasting Bonds collection, and it doesn't address the fact that the support department is so backlogged that it takes them half a year to fix something like this. Also, negative 15 upvotes. Have you tried contacting support regarding that? They could help by giving you collection item referring to this forum post. That's part of what OP is talking about. Why is support having to take time to give collection items for bugged achievements? That's something they have constantly had to do for years now, when they really shouldn't have to do all because progression stopping bugs are not fixed. That's exactly my point. The Lasting Bonds collection has been in the game for years at this point. Why is the bug not fixed? Took me less than 30 seconds to find that Ain't It has no plans to fix the Lasting Bonds collection. I couldn't find anything in 30 seconds so it doesn't exist. Is that your argument, LMAO? That's not the point. I was being sarcastic. It was fucking sarcasm based on his 30 seconds issue. It took me 30 seconds to find. I was fucking railing on that. It took me 30 seconds to find that Ain't It has no plans to fix the Lasting Bonds collection. You completely missed the fucking joke. And he got upvotes for it. I don't fucking see. This is the fucking brain dead shit that you see on the goddamn subreddit. It doesn't make any sense. They completely missed the goddamn joke, and they get upvoted for it, man. It's fucking rampant jerk off stupidity. That's exactly what this is. Sure, there are bugs that have been around for years. None are really game breaking. Surviving AAA bugs that actually kick you from the game every 30 minutes. I find Guild Wars 2 bugs barely affect my gameplay. But yes, would be nice if they were ironed out. But that also isn't true, is it? I had issues in Convergences where people were getting fucking booted from the game in Convergences last expansion pack for Soto. I would enter a Convergence and I'd get booted probably about 40% of the time. About 4 times out of 10, I would at some point during the instance of the Convergence get booted from the fucking Convergence. And you lose all access to the Convergence. And I think it took them a while to figure out a way to fix that issue. I haven't gotten booted from any of the old Soto Convergences in a while, but I also haven't done them in a couple months. But it literally took the developers like weeks, if not months, to figure out the issue in the crashes and stop it from happening. To the point where I would join squads. I would join a commander's tag, and everybody did this in the community, where commanders would tag up in the Convergence, even though it isn't really necessary to do that in the Convergence. People would tag up anyway in order to have people join their squad, so that if they did get booted from the lobby and their game crashed, they were able to re-enter the instance. That's a game-breaking bug, man. I feel like some players take issues like this and raise the stakes / take it extremely personal. I'm not taking it personal. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect decent bug support in a fucking MMORPG. I don't think it should be taking months, if not years, for these issues to be ironed out. I don't think I'm taking it personal. I think it's a very reasonable fucking thing to ask. It would be nice if things were fixed, but writing a rant like this, gives the impression that you can't play through any part of the game without experiencing hard-locking bugs. There are certain parts of the game that you experience hard-locking bugs, though. This is completely... They're making me seem like I'm crazy for asking the bare minimum here. I love how people are sitting here and acting as if I'm being dramatic, as if I am overstating something by calling out this bug. This is not a minor issue. This is not... something funny like T-posing on the back of your Warclaw whenever you use the sniff skill and you're digging up a treasure chest in Janther Wilds. This is not minor. This is not a tooltip error where a tooltip for a trait or a skill will say one thing, but it actually something completely different happens mechanically. There's a lot of those in the game. Those are minor. This is not minor. This is literally an entire achievement collection that doesn't work. It can't be progressed. Like that's not, it's not game breaking like it isn't causing crashes or anything, but it's not minor by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think I'm being dramatic here. Too many bugs, so little time. If a bug doesn't prevent completion of something, chances are that it'll be given a lower priority. Yeah, here's the issue. The bugs do prevent completions of something. That's what I'm ranting about here, dude. Top 1% commenter, by the way. He has a flair for top 1% commenter, by the way. This is what I'm talking about, man. It's a fucking cesspool down here. This is a top 1% commenter. Completely missed the fucking point. I'm convinced that ArenaNet doesn't actually fix bugs. I'm convinced that Okay, he quoted it twice for some reason. And this is the same fucking guy. I think I saw him earlier. Yeah, trying to be clever about this, by the way. I mean, do you read patch notes? I do. They're all World v. World bugs. No, because they have an issue with one collection on a single map, it doesn't matter that they fix bugs every patch. Those don't matter because they didn't fix the bug impacting them. And you completely missed the point of the Lasting Bonds collection. Completely missing the point that I have talked about numerous posts on the subreddit. I see one every couple of weeks of people going onto the subreddit and complaining, hey, the Omicron bandolier is not working. Has this been fixed yet? And it's been happening for literally years. One of the things that kind of blew me away reading the response to all these comments is I don't think a lot of people are really clocking what I'm saying here. I think a lot of people are focusing on the Tales of the Lowland Wisps collection being my focal point for this whole thing, and it's not. My general point here is that bugs are not being addressed when they really should be. But I think a really tiny part of my post that a lot of people should be really focusing on is the Lasting Bonds collection. Because the Lasting Bonds collection isn't just a collection in PvE. It isn't just like the Tales of the Lowland Wisps collection where all it gives you is a mastery point or whatever. The Lasting Bonds collection also unlocks the ability to craft Olmecon bandoliers in the increasing qualities. And the Olmecon bandoliers are a type of bag that are unique in the game. Containers and consumables will actually fill these bags before they will fill other bags in your inventory. The only other bag in the game that can do this is the Tengu bag, which you get from doing the Tengu weapon collection or whatever. So these Olmecon bandoliers they're not nothing. They're actually kind of important to a lot of players. And not only that, not only are we just the ability to craft these bags completely aside, right? The Lasting Bonds collection is also a step in crafting vision, which is a legendary trinket. In fact, it's one of the only legendary trinkets in the entire game. If you look at the page for legendary trinkets, there are only 2 accessories that you can craft that are legendary quality, and one of them is Aurora and the other one's Vision. So if you can't craft Vision, you can't fill that slot. There's no PvP or World v. World equivalent like there are for amulets or rings or whatever, right? So if you can't craft this, which I would assume a lot of players who have played the game long enough might end up doing at some point, you can't craft it. It's a vital step in the crafting process for Vision. It is required to craft that item. So you have to contact support at some point. It's not optional. Because ArenaNet has not fixed this fucking bug yet, at some point, every player that wants to craft Vision will have to contact support and get this fucking bug ironed out. That's my problem here. That's what I'm talking about here. This is not a minor bug. This is literally affecting multiple aspects and multiple stages of gameplay for a lot of players. This is not an insignificant bug. This is not one bug. They also missed the entire portion of my post where I went, there are probably a handful of other PvE collections that are bugged and cannot be progressed due to issues that have been in the game for years. There are others. I did more research on the subject. There's 5 others at the top of my head. There are a bunch of PvE collections in this game that are not fixed properly. Again, completely missing the point. This comment got removed by the moderator. I don't know why that's the case. But somebody replied, they generally don't fix any bugs that aren't fairly recent, and it's a coin toss if they fix something recent. So, I mean, there is some basis in reality. Man, I would have loved to have read this comment. I wonder how unhinged it was that a moderator had to get involved. They generally don't fix any bugs that aren't fairly recent. That's because the old code is spaghetti code and a major pain to find buggy code in it, much less diagnose the problem even when they have details of exactly when and where in the game a repeatable bug happens, especially if the relevant part of the code was done by somebody no longer with the company or has completely forgotten what they were doing at the time. That last bit is very common among programmers when they're crunching and don't have time to comment their code properly. Yeah, here's the issue with this. is, I agree with this, is a lot of the developers that used to work for Guild Wars 2, for ArenaNet, don't work there anymore because the studio is run like trash. So all the developers don't work there anymore. And yes, it is annoying to sift through old spaghetti code, but if you're a developer, you know what code does. I've done QA testing before, man. That's part of my job, is sifting through fucking old code that nobody in the company knows what to do with. That's why I'm hired. That's my job security, man. I'd love to work at a studio where I'm just given a pass because, oh, it's spaghetti code, so I can't figure it out, is accepted as a viable reason to not do my job. I'm told to fix whatever it is, regardless of how messy or slapped together the coding is, and usually have to redo it entirely so it's not a mess, because that's my job. Exactly. You're getting the fucking point here. I don't get to make excuses and still click the paycheck, crunch or no crunch. That's exactly it. This guy understands what the fuck is happening here. That's not an excuse to go, the old code is shitty, so they have an excuse to not actually do their job properly. Your job is to fix things. That's really cool, and I wish I had the opportunity to do more often. I've had to fight for the chance to fix spaghetti code so I can do my damn job after that. There's a finite amount of time we get. Sometimes we get more, sometimes we don't. That's not the... Again, you're missing the fucking top 1% commenter, by the way. Completely missing the fucking point here. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a fucking QA team. We're talking about a support team. This is their job, to fix bugs, and they can't do it properly. I don't believe for a second that ArenaNet doesn't have a single person, at least one person on the dev team for Guild Wars 2, whose entire job it is to bug fix. I don't believe that. Every MMORPG, every video game studio that I've worked for that had an online, especially a competitive aspect online, but any studio that I've worked for as a game developer that had an online issue, like an MMORPG or, you know, Dead by Daylight. I worked on fucking Dead by Daylight, right? They had specific developers on the team that were specifically, their job was to fix bugs. So I don't buy this. So once my main developer leaves, everyone has the excuse to not fix shit because they aren't the ones who wrote the origin code. I will tell you something, if ANET fires devs or they take their leave, which is a perfectly natural progression, then they need to find a way to still be doing work on the game, and I don't give a damn about spaghetti code excuses or whatnot. There are countless bugs in the game since years, and some of them are game-breaking, yet when I come to Reddit, I have to read excuses about why $1 million company can ask for your money but isn't doing what's expected of them. That's exactly it. And he got downvoted for it. Look at him. He has fucking negative votes. Literally, recent major patch had bug fixes for Core, Living World Season 1, Heart of Thorns, Living World Season 3, and EOD content. So I don't understand your comment, but those are super rare. These rarely happen. Okay? Fix an issue that could cause parts of the White Mantle Control, Norin's Homestead, meta event, and Dork to stall. Okay? So like one tiny event, and we're calling that a major patch? Really? That's a bit of an overinflation. I did say generally, are you new here? There are swathes of the game that have been bugged for years. Guild Wars 2 is the buggiest major MMO. Downvoted for that, by the way. Don't understand why you got downvoted for that. Nothing but purely subjective out-of-ass take. And yeah, that might be an out-of-ass take here. I don't think Guild Wars 2 is the buggiest MMO on the planet. But it definitely has a lot of bugs that should have been fixed a long time ago. See, this is an example of somebody taking a molehill and turning it into a mountain. I recently did a playthrough of story missions from Core through HOT and it didn't encounter any. That's bullshit. There are so many goddamn bugs first off, in Heart of Thorns. There's a ton of bugs in Heart of Thorns. But there are a lot of bugs in the fucking personal story quests. There are so many bugs in the personal story missions, man. I find that fucking hard to believe they didn't encounter any. Not saying that they don't exist, but it comes off as disingenuous selling a take like this when there's games that have required multiple rollbacks, emergency patches, and broken player economies. That's kind of true, not gonna lie. There's plenty of bypassable bugs which ANET for whatever reason chooses to ignore. For example, we all know these scuffed hitboxes on enemies like Shadow Behemoth, Octavine, etc., where some or even most of your abilities don't work. So the shit isn't fixed, right? No. What happens though is them adding more of this into the game. Hi, Suwon. That's a great example. Suwon has such shitty hitboxes. And I just have one question, why? But yeah, overall it seems like they either don't care whatsoever or think, like, someday we will retire from making expansions and take 10 years to shuffle through all the bugs we made along the way. The hitbox, I didn't even mention the hitboxes in my post. Hitboxes are real scuffed. To the point where, like, we have had to have entire skills reworked to circumvent the hitbox issues. A good example of this is the Catalyst, the Elementalist Catalyst hammer skills. The 3 skills on Hammer for Elementalist create whirling projectiles around you, and you can go through each attunement and have up to 4 of them circling you in orbit around at once. The issue is we had Catalyst players using those skills to deal crazy amounts of damage to enemies that were able to clip through their hitbox multiple times, basically. It was a whole thing that happened. So rather than fixing the hitbox system, Iridinet basically made the hammer skills like an aura, basically, that basically tick every single second. Rather than fixing the hitboxes, they basically had to change fundamentally how the skill worked. That's what I'm talking about here. And I didn't even mention hitboxes. That's a great example of it. There's a ton of really, really shitty hitboxes in the game. Now, this is just how software development goes. You ever look at Windows patch notes, MS Office, any piece of software? There are tons of bugs around in every single piece of software that you've never even heard of. Good software means most of the bugs don't affect most users, that's all. Exactly, people think everything is done at perfection. With a bit of insight, you realize that most software actually works by chance. So, first off, no. The software development teams actually have dedicated bug support users. Like, either they're open source and the community is able to contribute to like bug supports, as is the case in like GitHub or code-based repositories. You can have your community fix bugs for you and then push it and then commit those changes to the global thing, right? But this is a video game, and the community doesn't do that. The community doesn't contribute to those things. So this means that you need to have on staff dedicated QA testers. You need to have people on staff that are actively developing and fixing old bugs. Every game development studio has these. Blizzard has a bunch of them for every single one of the games that they work on. I know for a fact that Final Fantasy XIV. I know for a fact that Square Enix has a bunch of bug testers. Guild Wars 2 does not. And that's what I'm pointing out here, is that the developers at ArenaNet there's no dedicated bug support team. And if there is, they're not doing their job correctly, man. That's what I'm pointing out here. And you know what actually best proves my point of that? They outsourced QA on Soto. I have a video on my second channel where I sit there and I live react to finishing Soto, basically. And at one point in the credits, there is a QA studio that passes through the credits or whatever, and it's a big team, which means that ANET outsourced their quality assurance department. They're not doing it internally, which is a great example of why these bugs stay in the game for years. Quality assurance, that's a fucking joke. Do likewise. They really outsourced fucking QA testing to other people? Like they couldn't even do that in-house? Is this where all the money is going? Now that we're done reacting to the replies to my post, how about we talk about something tangentially related? Fun fact, somebody made a post a day after I made mine with a very similar message. The post was in regards to the Fort Aspenwood meta event in Echo Vault Forest being bugged. These issues have been in the game for over 2 years. The meta is bugged, and sometimes it just can't be completed. This feels like it impacts players, no? It feels like the developers should have fixed this by now. What I find most strange is that this post was positively received by the community simply because it did not throw shade at the developers. The message behind this post was almost identical to mine. They are trying to bring attention to an issue that has been in the game for a long time, and they're hoping that one of the developers sees the post and fixes the problem. The only difference is, again, not criticizing the current developer team. In fact, I saw someone leave a reply stating something along the lines of, if the problem is more than 2 weeks old, the developers will never fix it, and I hit them with a, it's weird how I said the same thing recently and my post got downvoted for it, to which a very kind Redditor replied with a, that's because your post was whiny as hell. Also, as per usual, my comment got downvoted into oblivion and this person's reply got upvoted massively. Funny, you all just proved my point. It's like you don't even realize the hypocrisy behind all of your actions. And also, because I'm petty, it's a little funny that this person called me whiny when just a few weeks ago they chastised somebody in a politically charged post and said that they needed to, quote, drop the insults and sarcasm and talk like an adult. That is a little ironic, isn't it? They've also made comments telling people to stop being so negative, they've spread false information regarding controller support in World of Warcraft, and they've also talked about how Mirage is one of the best DPS specs in the game, despite Snowcrow's placing Connie Mirage at rank 23, and Power Mirage isn't even on the fucking list. Yeah, every Mesmer should really be playing Mirage right now, it's in a fantastic state. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These people don't know what they're saying. Half of the time, it is unsolicited bad advice, and when it is solicited, it's usually wrong. I'm not saying that Mirage is terrible, but it is by no means the quote best DPS in the game. That is objectively false. Back onto the topic at hand. I think a lot of people on the subreddit are missing the point of my post. The developers aren't fixing bugs that actually impact their player base. They're only interested in fixing the newest issues or issues in competitive game modes. They don't have enough people on the dev team working on the back of the bug reports. Are the developers getting better about these fixes? Yes, recently we have had a string of minor bug fixes, and I use that word in a lot of quotes, minor bug fixes, regarding old content. I do hope that all these devs keep it up because there are a lot more bugs to sift through, and I also do hope at some point that some of these old PvE collections are patched. Maybe they will, but that isn't really the point of this video. My favorite thing about all this is that I was absolutely correct. Going into this, I was able to predict 90% of what people were going to say before they even said it. That is how droll and boring and predictable the subreddit is. Most of them don't even realize that they are lemmings inching towards the edge of the cliff. They're in denial of their nature. Listen, I understand that fixing things can be hard, but it is by no means impossible. These lemmings are acting like I'm unreasonable for asking that bugs blocking progress in these collections not stay in the game for months or even years. Is that really such a wild take? Am I really asking for too much here? Guild Wars 2 doesn't have side quests like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy does. All the side stories and side quests in this game are embedded into the achievement system in the form of these collections. Bugs can happen in these other games, but they're usually pretty rare, and when they're discovered, they are patched out of the game extremely quickly, usually in about a week or two. And before anyone gets mad at me, I understand that the developer team for World of Warcraft is bigger than the team behind Guild Wars 2, but as far as my research turns up, the developer team for World of Warcraft is only 2 or even 3 times bigger than Guild Wars 2, so statistically it should take ArenaNet 2 or 3 times longer to fix the issues, right? Imagine if World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV had a side quest chain where only one side quest in the chain was bugged for 6 months and prevented players from being able to complete the entire chain. It would be anarchy in the forums, and people would be riffing on Blizzard even more than they already are. Now, imagine if the same was true, but rather than 6 months, the bug had been present for over 6 years. Living World Season 4's Sandswept Isles came out in 2018. It has been in the game for almost 7 years. There is somebody watching this that has a child that is older than that. This bug is older than some of your grade school age children. The developers 100% know about this issue, and rather than fixing the problem, they hand out band-aids to the community, but only when you ask for them, and only when you make it public on their forums. That's my problem here. That is the point that I was trying to make with my post. I don't think I'm being unreasonable here. I think the subreddit is a part of the problem, especially when you consider the fact that the subreddit is influenced by the developers. Developers have their own flair on the subreddit, so there is obviously communication between the ANET developers and the moderators. These game developers clearly use the subreddit, and if they're anything like the rest of these lemmings, they probably don't like seeing negative posts about their work. Today's video only proved my point. I am giving very concrete and realistic viewpoints on issues in the game. People are just like, nah, fuck you, it's too difficult to accomplish. And if you only browse the subreddit, you might be influenced to believe that this is what the majority of the community in Guild Wars 2 believes, but that's not true. Content creators have been very vocal about some of the issues in the game. I talk to people on the forums and in-game, and they all rant about very similar issues that I talk about. So clearly the people in the subreddit do not represent a vocal majority of what the people in the community want for the game as a whole. I know what people are going to hit me with in the comments in this video. Are there more pressing concerns that I would like to see addressed? Absolutely. Warrior and Thief are still among the worst goddamn classes from a PvE perspective, and they will need some major love from the developers to make them competitive with the other options. Research notes suck, and we need to be given more options for gaining this currency, even if we're limited to like a 100 per week off of raid currency or something. And speaking of raids and strikes, a not so insignificant portion of the community feels intimidated by high-level PvE, when in reality, strikes and raids are not that complicated, and anybody that knows how to tie their shoes is perfectly capable of completing them. It's just that the LFG window is severely outdated and difficult to navigate properly, and for some reason, a portion of the player base relies on quickness and alacrity to function properly, so now we have issues with the meta being reinforced. Are these more prevalent concerns for me? Yes. Do I still want major bugs to be fixed within a few weeks of their discovery? Also, yes. And I don't think I'm asking for too much when I say that. I think it's a very realistic and reasonable expectation for an MMORPG. I legitimately cannot recall at the top of my head another MMORPG with as many obvious bugs as Guild Wars 2 has, and I've played a lot of MMOs. I genuinely want to see what a day in the average ArenaNet developer looks like, because from my perspective, it looks like the most cushy job in the industry right now. We are seeing massive layoffs across the game development industry, and ArenaNet is seemingly just letting the developers do the bare minimum and then pat themselves on the back. Now that we are approaching the end of the video here, I would like to reiterate that I am not campaigning for any hostility towards anyone that I've shown in the video. Do not go and harass any moderators of the subreddit. Do not go and harass any users of the subreddit. Do not go and harass the developers. Do not go and get yourself banned from the subreddit. Well, maybe you should actually just save yourself the option of swimming through a cesspool ever again. But my point is that I already hold myself in a higher esteem than 99% of the people on the subreddit do. They don't know what they're talking about, and they've only proven that with all the responses to my post. Nothing they could say would ever matter to me. It would be the equivalent of trying to explain complex astrophysics to a flat earther. It's just not worth my time, and it's really not worth yours. If you stuck around until the end of the video, thank you for watching. I do apologize for being sparse on the uploads. Recently it has been a, shall we say, rough year for me, so hopefully that will change soon. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.